Hi, welcome to the DRH show where I have wide-ranging conversations with fascinating people. We talk about all things psychology, mental health, and wellness. Joining me today are the hosts of the Clean Your Fucking House Bitch podcast. They have similar interests but different perspectives and experiences. Their goal is to share timeless information that has helped them throughout the years, as well as their clients. So joining me today are Nancy Bayham, Louis Brown, and Kevin Anderson. Yeah, great to have you all here. So let's kick this off by you telling us your background, your trajectory in life, and how you ended up doing what you're doing. So let's hear it first from Nancy Bayham.
Those are big questions, background, trajectory, and my desires. But I have a corporate background. I am currently a certified life and health coach and really just looking to bring positive energy to everyone I get to interact with.
Thank
Keeping it
you.
simple.
Thank you. And Louis?
Thank you. And thank you for having us, by the way. I have a background in mathematics. I have a Bachelor of Science in quantitative analysis. And I worked in the insurance industry for many, many, many years. I took a change or made a change about 5 years ago into the personal development sphere. Now I work as a professional performance consultant, a habit change practitioner, and a neurochange practitioner.
Mm-hmm. And
my
lastly,
trajectory is really to just keep going with what I'm doing now and help as many people as I can.
Absolutely. And Kevin?
Yeah, similar vision to Nancy and Lou. What got me into this space of personal development was just a lot of shitty situations that I dealt with in my life, and kind of finding ways to overcome. And so my goal is just to spread the knowledge that helped me to get to where I'm at, and the things I use still every day to maintain, a level of fulfillment and happiness.
We'll talk more about what prompted you to start this personal development podcast. But of course, you have an interesting title for a podcast. So would any one of you share what's the story behind the title? Any one of you?
Who wants to do it?
Well, I think it's a bit comical, but take it, Lou.
Yeah, because I actually remember fairly distinctly how this came about. We were talking about getting together and doing this podcast, and wow, what kind of name could we give this thing? Because we have some varied backgrounds and interests, as we'll get into a little later on. But then we just started getting really a little dopey and funny about the whole thing, and just kind of cracking up about some different titles. And I don't know if Kevin may have said something about fuck, and I may have said something about shit or house or whatnot. And we ended up thinking, well, you know what? Our minds are just filled with so much useless shit that we need to get rid of. Pretty much everyone has some crap and clutter in their minds that they need to get rid of. So we ended up just landing on Clean Your Fucking House Bitch. And we ran with it. We were a little hesitant at first, giving us a little racy perhaps. But you know what? It really fits perfectly with what we talk about and the kind of people we help.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, you alluded to earlier what prompted you to be in the personal development business, as you've put it. But give us a bit more of a snapshot of what your live experience, perhaps, of what prompted you to, kind of share your story to other people.
Yeah. So, kind of a long story. I'll shorten it up. But when I was younger, I dealt with a lot of different things, kind of labeled as depression, whatever. I just didn't feel good, and I would try to get help, and I just felt like every available resource was none of them really resonated with me. So I tried alternative means with hypnosis, meditation, and like that really changed my life. And so I guess that's where the journey started. And then since then, it's just been, I feel like personal development is a 24/7 thing. It's every decision that we make throughout our lives at any moment is either going to help us work towards who we want to become and what goals we want to achieve, or hinder us in achieving that.
And what about Louis and Nancy? What prompted you to be part of this podcast?
Well, we were, the three of us, working together before the podcast to do some live webinars to offer a workshop that we do together. And so we found when we would get together to do this marketing in these live webinars that before and after we were chatting and chatting and chatting. And we really enjoyed that. So that's what prompted us to be together chatting and sharing, because we felt like we had something to offer. And really that's what prompted us to do this and how we ended up.
Yeah, every time we'd have a conversation, it would just be like invigorating, right? Like I would get off the phone and be pumped up, and it was always full of, different perspectives, quality information, and it excited all of us. We're like, maybe it can excite some other people too.
I suppose it's invigorating because your perspectives are kind of complementary when it comes to personal development. But what I'm interested to hear from all of you is that what does each of you bring that is different from one another? Well, obviously profession-wise and interest-wise, like Louis, he's a number guy, and Kevin, I suppose you're coming from your own experience, and Nancy as a coach. But what other than within the surface, what does the unique selling point of each other when it comes to hosting the podcast?
Well, Lou brings the humor for sure, and and Kevin brings the no bullshit that we like to live by. That's our standard that we like to live by. So somehow,
and a lot of zen. Kevin's a lot of zen.
Yeah, and a lot of zen.
Nancy's the researcher.
I was gonna say somehow I got a rap for research and preparation, and Kevin likes to act like he's swinging from the hip most of the time. But probably he's doing the research and I'm swinging from the hip.
Well, Nancy, you always bring us back on the topics too when we kind of veer off for a half hour.
I understand.
Which usually happens because we all have those different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So.
There are tangents for sure.
Okay. Well, you said that you have different perspectives. So let's say, for instance, do you go to more sensitive topics such as let's say politics or something about something more topical? Do you talk about that, or is it just more about personal development?
We do focus mostly on personal development. We don't really get into politics too much. A couple things will come up here and there. But I feel like we do complement each other. I think all of us kind of have different viewpoints with a lot of stuff as well. And we're still able to have, respectful, engaging conversations with each other, still respect each other. So we do, what do you guys think? Have we done any topics?
Well, what I was going to add is that what I really enjoy is the fact that when we have a particular topic, and I'll use as an example, say mental health, emotional management, things like that. I know Nancy and I are a little bit more in line with, say, being okay with, say, prescription drugs and therapy and things like that. Not that we really advocate that stuff, because all of us really believe that there's other things that may be better as a frontline defense, or that someone might want to try first before they try other things. But where I'm going is the fact that, those things could still help in some ways. And I get the impression, Kevin, from knowing you all this time and working with you, that not that you're so adamant against them, but you're less inclined to lean toward those things, say, than Nancy and I. So but again, we have those respectful conversations. As you mentioned, we can still offer our viewpoints.
Yeah, and it's good to hear. I appreciate your guys' perspectives on things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, would you like to add anything on that? How do you I suppose air your viewpoints when it's kind of conflicting with Louis and Kevin?
I ask questions. I think in the same way that I would be coaching, it's about getting curious and finding the answers as to why something was said or what they're thinking or what's behind it. So really, I like to just explore further what it is they might be saying or sharing. And I was feeling the exact same as Kevin in the sense that we don't always have the same perspective, but we have respect for each other. So we build on what we like from each other, and we just let the other things sit to the side.
And of course, the past few years, it's been quite challenging. It's been extra tough on many people for obvious reason. But how does the world affairs, the current situation impact your selection of episodes? And how do you decide on topics?
Well, of course, we want to be relevant, current, and timely with the things that are impacting people today, right? Like we really know that this has heightened mental health and created more stress in people's lives. So just that alone has fueled most any topic where it's tangent to something happening in someone's life. So we really just go with what we feel in the moment about what's happening in our lives in the time.
Yeah, we have conversations before we record, and that's typically when we come up with the topics that we're going to talk about. And it kind of just happens organically, right? We'll be discussing something, someone will throw out a random word, and then we talk about it. But regarding, the world and the state of the world the past few years now, couple years, it's really opened up my eyes, because we talk a lot about putting the power back into each individual's hands, right? And not accepting like a victim mentality. And I was able to really prove that to myself in 2020, where a lot of people were down and out. I had a lot going on as well. I know Lou and Nancy had a lot of stuff to deal with, but I still had the best year of my life, despite all the shit that has been going on. So that is, it's just eye-opening that we do create our reality. And once we develop a good relationship with ourselves, we learn to trust ourselves. We're compassionate with ourselves. We love ourselves. I think that's really the first steps to building on greatness or success, however each person defines success.
Yeah, and that they can do it no matter what.
Yeah,
Sorry,
one thing I was going to say, one thing that, Dennis, you mentioned up front when you were talking about our podcast is the word timeless. The information we share, whether it's the past 2 years, the past 20 years, the past 200 plus years, the information we share really can apply to any situation. The past 2 years has been particularly interesting because it gave almost like a real life example or scenario of a situation where someone can apply the sort of things we talk about. Having control of your own destiny, kind of moving on from the past and just looking to see where you want to go with your life. So whether there's a pandemic going on, whether there's a downturn in the economy, whether everything's going very well, you really should never stop and think about where you want to go, the kind of goals you want to set. So again, timeless is a great word to describe the kind of stuff we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what else occurred with all that too? I was just thinking as you were talking, Lou, but people don't like to get out of their comfort zones, right? They're typically fearful of, a whole abundance of things, but people were forced to get out of their comfort zones with everything that was going on. A lot of people don't spend time alone with themselves. A lot of people got to stay busy, and they, are always trying to engage their mind with something. A lot of people were forced to be in solitude, and possibly force some introspection as well. I think it was a big shift. And again, if you utilize like the information that we talk about, which is timeless, like Lou said, it's not new stuff. It's the things that stand the test of time, that are constants in life, that were written, thousands of years ago, that helped people. Meditation. Lou and Nancy make fun of me sometimes because I talk about meditation constantly, but if there was ever like a one size fits all thing, or a magic bullet for people to establish the relationship with themselves, emotional stability, understanding how your mind works, the thoughts that you have, pretty much everything, it's that, that's been around forever.
I was just gonna ask, other than you talking about your own choice of topic, do you also invite guests? I would imagine you also invite guests.
Absolutely. We've had a handful of guests, and we really enjoy the perspectives they bring as well. Like, we had a professional soccer player, and we talked about from soccer goals to life goals. We had a gentleman who really had his own physical medical challenges, and he talked about meditation versus medicine. We really appreciate that. We had a sex coach come join us and go for some wild conversations there, right? We're open to topics with guests.
And
the common thread, of course, is the personal development angle. But what's interesting about all the guests we've had is the particular folks they work with. And of course, you see that in their passion when they speak to us, but the different challenges that their clients face and what brought them to work with those particular individuals. Really fascinating conversations.
And this might seem trivial questions. When you invite guests, I suppose you send them an email. Do they get some sort of reaction with the title of your podcast?
Well, I'll take a stab in terms of, we certainly have to go out and ask people that we know, some people that we don't know all that well. A couple of reactions I've got in terms of the title was a little hesitant at first, but after we explained a little bit more about what we do, pretty much everyone that I know hopped on board. I don't recall anyone saying no. There was just sometimes a little bit of that upfront hesitation with, well, I really need to look and see what exactly this is all about. Send me a link to your podcast. But again, do you guys remember anyone who actually did not?
No, I don't think any of the guests we invited ever turned us down, right? That you're right. They might have taken a moment to think about it. But I know there are some connections I have who have said, I'm not going to listen because of the name. Like they just felt that it was too offensive to them. But honestly, I feel like that's their opportunity to expand their awareness, because what we have to say is completely different.
Well, I think that's one thing that resonates with me. If you're a content creator, you sometimes get reactions. Even some of my interviews, because I've done this for about 3 years now. Some of the interviews I've actually uploaded, they were taken down because my previous guests decided that they don't want to be part of Psychridge and they don't want to be linked with the people that I've interviewed. So. But I suppose you're more diplomatic than I am, and you're kind of better with when it comes to marketing and branding. But with all the people that you've invited and the topics that you've talked about, what would you say are the most common challenges that people face, be it in relation to the pandemic or even before that?
Well, I think a lot of people make decisions out of fear instead of love. They don't stay true to themselves. Part of what you were just discussing, I think the most important thing that you can do is doing content, uploading content, is to be authentic and be true to yourself, because no matter what you do, there's going to be people that hate on you. Like no matter what, you cannot please everybody. There are going to be people that leave nasty comments, shit like that. So the best thing you can do is be authentic. But yeah, a lot of people live in fear. People don't like to get out of their comfort zones. People aren't, they're not conscious of where they're at. And, they don't, a lot of people don't analyze. I'm really generalizing the whole entire society right now, but just in general, a lot of people have jobs they hate, for instance, right? And they can't get out of this 9-to-5, the rat race, because they have bills to pay, they're in debt, whatever. And, it's just trying to get out of the programmed mindset of society and a materialistic worldview in order to achieve fulfillment for yourself, whatever that means. It can be anything. But
I think you're right, Kevin. It's anything. And one thing is that if it seems to be a common thread in what people come to us is that they have an issue they think is going to fix it. If I change my job, my life will be better. If I change my diet, my life will be better. If I get more exercise, my life will be better. I think the real common thread comes from people finding out there's other things along the way that they gain awareness to, realize they have choices about, and can take action towards. That's not under that umbrella. If I fix this one thing, my life will be perfect. And that's where the aha moments come.
Yeah, what's related to both of those two is with fear, and then I would like to do this, I want to do this, or if I do this, my life will change, is that resistance to change. So many people say they would like to do something or they want to do something, but like Kevin mentioned, having that fear, it just creates this huge resistance to change. One thing that's interesting that's going on in the States here, Dennis, I don't know if it's going on over there, but we've had this thing called the Great Resignation, where a lot of, I think it's really the younger folks who have done this, but there's folks of all ages, have left their jobs and are looking for some greener pastures. And I think it took a while, but I think it's the effect of a lot of things we talk about. they did some introspection. They looked to see, what exactly is it that I want in life? I'm not happy with my job. I'm not engaged. I'm really not getting out of life what I want. And it really started to take hold. I think in large part because they listened to our podcast, but but it is
we love you,
an
Lou.
interesting dynamic. Yes.
You know what, though, along with what you guys are saying, certain changes in your life, environment is huge. What you're spending your time doing is big, but happiness is also a choice, right? So a lot of times this end result, this result goal that you have, once you get there, you might realize like you're still trying to reach for something else and it's not bringing you the fulfillment that you thought. A lot of times it's just a choice to be happy and be present. Another thing with you asked what a lot of people struggle with, it's thinking about the past. A lot of people just recycle the same thoughts, have the same emotions over and over again every day. And, Nancy doesn't really like when I say this, I don't think, but, the past only really exists in our imagination. That's the only place the past exists anymore. So it's like you can spend your time replaying events in your life. A lot of them end up being negative for some reason for a lot of people, or you can be present and, enjoy life and be observant and pay attention and be aware, and then we also talk a lot about having a vision for your future. Where do you want to be? Every single detail. Where do you want to work? What relationships do you want? And who do you want to become? Who do you want to be? And for the three of us, we get a lot of fulfillment out of achievement, which, achievement is a huge motivator for most people. But we just realize the impact that doing certain things, taking certain actions in your life, making the right decisions, and again, compassion, because none of us are perfect.
Decision.
We all fuck up, right? And we take a couple steps forward, take a step back once in a while. So not beating yourself up for making mistakes and not being perfect. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, one of the things that I know, one of the things that comes up over and over again too is, in addition to what Kevin mentions, we're always thinking about the past. We're also doing the same things that we've always done to try and solve a problem over and over again. One of the concepts that we discuss here and there is something called the failure cycle. And it's amazing how many times people continue to use the same technique or the same approach to solve what they perceive as a problem, and they don't get any results. I mean, the diet world is a perfect example. New Year's resolutions, people want to change. They start off the new year with this great goal in mind. Then 95% of them quit. And certainly we have a lot of information that we share about why all of this occurs. But one in particular that comes up over and over again is overwhelm. They just try to do too much too soon. So a lot of what we talk about is just taking things in baby steps, taking life in baby steps, reaching your goals just through baby steps. That I have seen that come up over and over again with a lot of people that we've talked to.
And I suppose that ties in with one of the brilliant points from Kevin earlier. He mentioned something about victim mentality. And I suppose that sits at the core of personal development. If you're stuck in that victim mentality, no matter what you do, you can't develop yourself. So you will always just dwell upon your adversity, upon your trauma. And, you have to realize that with the right interventions, with the right toolkits, you can actually be, you're capable of developing yourself. And I think it's really wonderful that with resources such as your podcast, you're able to make people realize that actually you don't have to keep on, victimizing yourself. There's actually an opportunity for you to thrive and to flourish. And I suppose that's that the same aha moment that you mentioned earlier, Nancy, that you have to make people realize that actually there's another aspect of myself in spite of what I've experienced. Now, you mentioned earlier that you don't really just dwell in personal development, although it's the overarching thing of your podcast. But do you have any dream topic or dream guest, shall we say, that you'd like to cover in your podcast?
I've not ever thought about that, but there you go.
That was a really good question.
I'm thinking Tony Robbins would be a great dream guest. No.
Honestly, I would like to have Joe Dispenza on.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's that
Yeah, he's
book
great.
that I think it was Wayne, right? Wayne was a guest on. He brought that
Yeah,
book
Wayne
up.
mentioned it.
Becoming Supernatural. It's an amazing book. I'd love to have him on. And a lot of that, going back though, Lou was talking about failure, and then you brought up victim mentality. Blame is part of the failure cycle, right? And the problem is that when we blame other things and we play victim, we're relinquishing control over ourselves and our lives, basically, because we're saying that thing or that person or that situation has control over me. And, it's difficult to change that. I think and I'm being, I'm empathizing right now. I come off a little bit more hard on the podcast, because I don't bullshit, it's about taking responsibility, not blaming anyone else for your failures, your fuck ups. Be true to you, accept responsibility. And that's how you grow. A lot of people that fail, they blame other shit, then they don't learn anything. And Lou, Nancy, and I always talk about how when you try something, you take a chance on something, oftentimes when you fail, you learn way more than when you actually succeed. So don't cut yourself short of an amazing opportunity to learn something firsthand. Accept your failures and then move forward and adapt and change. Like Lou said, don't do the same shit over and over again. Another thing we talk about is habits, which are difficult to break. So tune in if you want some information on that. We have some little things you can do regarding habit change, but it's hard. So just accept responsibility. And it might feel like shit. You might feel a little bit worse, but then you get stronger.
Okay.
And
But
then
just-
failure doesn't even matter. You accept it. It's just a normal part of the course that you're on.
But
Well,
just
and if I can add one thing
sorry.
real quick, Dennis, is just the word failure. Whenever I hear that word now, it brings up another element to our discussions, which is power of thoughts and words. I like to use the word feedback instead of failure because that word has just created a negative connotation in society and for many, many, many years. So a lot of what we talk about is also just using more positive words and having more positive thoughts. And that's a great way to actually move on from where you're at. I know with me, if I keep saying the word or thinking the word failure, it feels negative. It feels like, oh, I can't get out of this. I can never move ahead. I've had so many failures. Thinking about it just in terms of feedback is a completely different way of looking at it and not as, I guess, harmful.
Yeah,
I like
fail
that.
forward.
I love that, Lou.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about perspectives. But I just want to quickly go back to what Kevin mentioned earlier, because he mentioned that you have to take accountability and take responsibility. But I was wondering what Kevin's take is, because we at the risk of sounding political here, we live in a society now that kind of encourages victim mentality. So in spite of you trying to, take responsibility, but sometimes society, especially Western society, rewards victim mentality. So and sometimes it gets in the way of you, taking advantage of personal development. So what would be your advice for people that, well, I'd rather not, kind of develop myself, take responsibility, because I'll get rewarded anyway if I present myself as a victim?
It's difficult. It has to be a conscious choice first, right? Just like being offended. Everybody seems to be offended about everything nowadays, and cancel culture wants to cancel things that hurt your feelings. We come from a perspective of your emotions are your responsibility. You are choosing to be offended, basically, right? Just because you're experiencing an emotion doesn't make it valid. It doesn't need to be there. Emotions come from our thoughts. So that would be one step, is to pay attention to how you're being affected by things, right? Because we're going to have reactions emotionally to events and situations. And what we can do, if we're more mindful of where we're at and how we're being affected, we can choose responses versus having immediate reactions. So maybe pausing a little bit, analyzing the emotion that you're feeling and really breaking it down. You don't want to repress anything, but you want to process that emotion, pay attention to how you're feeling and why. Where are you holding that emotion in your body? Where are you feeling it? And sit with it for a little bit and analyze it, talk to it. And then it'll, everything is impermanent, everything in life. So it changes, it goes away. With the whole politic thing, we don't really get into that. My whole viewpoint on it is that anything that divides people, whether it's politics, religion, color of your skin, gender, if it divides people, that's not a good thing. The only way that we make this world a better place, because it is fucked up, the only way that we make it a better place is coming together and being good people, leaving the world a better place than when you got here, which is our goal. And that's, again, I guess, why we have the podcast, to try to reach out and help.
Our own footprint. We each can expand goodness, if you will, with our own footprint and help others find it within themselves.
Absolutely. And speaking
one of the things
sorry.
I was going to add, Dennis, one of the things with politics in general, and a lot of topics that are, say, controversial, is the misinformation or disinformation that's out there. Whenever I think of information or research or trying to get at answers, I never think it's all or nothing. And all of us agree to that, because that's the type of work we do with our clients. It's rooted in the concepts of coaching, which is it's never all or nothing. There's usually a spectrum or something, say, in between. And getting to that concept of coaching is also where, when we work with people who have challenges, we never offer our own advice or suggestions or anything like that. It's always asking them questions to get at what is causing them to not be able to move forward. So a lot of it is just helping them to kind of look within themselves. And that, quite frankly, that's true with anything. Again, politics, religion, any concept that comes up, it's, just gather as much information as you can and make your own best informed decision, because it's so hard really to find the truth with so many things. And again, answers are never black and white. It's not yes and no. It's usually
what I feel like.
Spectrum.
I feel like the truth is subjective, right? Like whatever you decide is the truth is your truth, because a lot of what Lou would consider misinformation is probably a lot of the shit that I think is true, because we differ with our views on stuff. So again, being true to yourself, but also being a good person, being respectful to others. And like, I appreciate Lou's views, even when we get into arguments about shit, which hasn't happened in a while, actually.
No, they're always positive arguments anyway.
But I still appreciate, because he looks at things different than I do. So I appreciate, once you make your mind up on something and you reject other information, you're fucked, right? Because you're not going to grow and you're not going to learn. Just like with the title of our podcast, someone, it could literally be life-changing information. It was for us. It could be for any particular person, but they don't even try it because the words offend them. Like it could literally be something that inspires them and changes their lives, or at least sets them on a course to change, but they shut it down, so it's being a little bit more open. People decide, they fight, they argue with one another. We've been killing each other since we've been on this planet, going to war over dumb shit. We can't come together. Just be a good fucking person. Be a quality human being. Past.
Let's talk about
Well, it's just the truth. I mean,
little personal development joke there, folks.
Human beings as a whole,
but it's true.
Are not very effective.
Yes,
but we can be. That's what we're trying to do.
And I could feel Kevin's passion when it comes to personal development, and I suppose your listeners would really kind of relate to your passion about personal development when they listen to your podcast. So what I'll do is I'll pop in on the description or the link to your podcast, so anyone can listen more to your insights, what you think about personal development is. But quickly, I just want to go back to what Lewis mentioned earlier about because you emphasize the importance of habit when it comes to personal development. But other than, changing our habits, would you have any tips on how to, practice personal development? This is my question for all of you.
I have a very quick, easy suggestion. We build these, we grow these neural networks in our brains, and that's where the habits come from. This is why we can drive a car without consciously thinking about it. We've created a neural network that is there to operate a vehicle. When we're just going off of the hardwired pathways that we have installed into our brains, we're on autopilot basically, right? We can literally drive to work, do the same shit every day, go home, eat, watch TV, go to bed every single day. So one way to start to change that up, start building new neural pathways, new neural networks in your brain, is to just do your morning routine different. Like, start there. You know, if you wake up and make your bed and brush your teeth and get coffee, switch that up, because you're doing something different and you're changing up things. So just like anything, the more that you do something, the better you get at it, right? So adapting to change is something that you can get good at. Getting out of your comfort zone is something that you can get good at. Not living in fear is something that you can get good at. So, but yeah, with the habit thing, just change your morning routine. Was that not a suggestion on one of our guests that came on?
I'm sure. I mean, I bet we've talked about it numerous times too.
Mhm.
I think what I want to share is that for anyone who's struggling to go in the direction they want, or just to, and it could be in life or with a thing in life, but you don't have to start over. You just have to keep going, and it's one step at a time, and keep going. That would be my tip.
You know what? I had this realization yesterday I'll share with both of you. I was sitting in the barbershop waiting for hours because my guy takes his time on everybody. And I literally had this like kind of epiphany, and this is going to be common sense basically for everyone listening, but it just hit me different. And it was like, at any moment, at any present moment, I can decide to be a different person. You know, I don't have to, like, what we do is we compile everything from the past and put it on us, and that's who we are. But at any given moment, you can just change, and you don't have to
Choice.
do any of the shit that you don't want to do or that you know you shouldn't do. That's pretty amazing.
Which actually is a good segue to what I was just going to add. Is 3 words come to mind. You know, we're talking about habit change and just trying to develop ourselves in a positive way. Is awareness, belief, and commitment. Those things come up over and over again too, because no one is going to change unless they first commit to it. They believe that they can do it. That kind of relates back to the power of our thoughts and words, and just being aware of it. You know, a lot of people, we all talk about this, kind of live in this rat race thing, thinking they just need to do the same things over and over again, stay in their job, etc. But when you just take a moment to think about, where am I at? Where do I want to go? What have I learned from my past? Just kind of opening up your mind and being aware of your situation. It really gets people off on a whole new footing and a whole new start in life. It's, you know, a really great way to kind of kickstart the whole thing.
Now, when you're looking backwards, you're blocked. And when you give yourself space for awareness, right, to be open, then you've created space to move forward. So that's awesome, Lou.
Now, I just want to ask, because you the 3 of you is in business of personal development. So especially with your podcast, you would come across with stories from people and what they think about personal development. So I would imagine that you've come across a number of misconceptions. So if you could kind of identify some of the misconceptions about personal development and also address them. So let's hear it from Nancy. What's the main misconception you think about personal development?
Well, this may be controversial to people, but we talk about it a lot, and I just kind of mentioned it as well. We're talking about motivation and commitment. And sometimes people struggle finding motivation. I need motivation to get started, and I can't get started without it. I think you just need the commitment. And if you're committed to take action, you can do it whether you feel like it or not. Sometimes that first step on a walk is your foot is the heaviest thing on earth. But if you go, the next time it'll be a bit easier. So it's just about, you don't have to feel the super motivation. You just have to be committed.
That is an awesome answer, Nancy. And honestly, just like you said, if you do accomplish something, accomplishment is the biggest motivator, in my opinion. When someone accomplishes something, the harder it was to do, the better. Once they accomplish it, there's that motivation that you've been looking for.
Even the smallest thing, I think we want to really let people know too, the smallest thing you achieve, you can build on that.
So just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people have dreams and they have a vision, but where people mess up is not taking any action.
Yeah,
You know,
that Nike slogan
action.
is really powerful. Just do it.
Just do it. Yep.
Yeah. And what about you, Louis? What would you say are one of the greatest misconceptions in relation to personal development?
This is a great question because I mentioned my background being in the left brain world, being a math major, working in insurance all these years. So a lot of people that I know and have interacted with on a regular basis all think the kind of stuff that I'm doing now is so woohoo and out there and really doesn't work. And yet when I've invited them for some client sessions, one-on-one discussions, or even coming to some of our workshops, it's amazing the aha moments they have. And a lot of this is really rooted in science, which is, again, my background and where I come from and what they can relate to. So it's very important, of course, to, kind of speak in terms that people can relate to. But as Kevin mentioned, with neural networks and the whole aspect of neuroscience, which is what I've been studying a lot more, things like visualizations and affirmations impact our brain in a positive way. But for me, my initial discussions with a lot of the people in that left brain world was thinking that stuff was just voodoo, magic and stuff that really didn't work. And that is the biggest misconception that I have had people overcome in my world.
Thank you. Now, we've already learned a few things about your podcast and also the kind of background behind the story of your podcast. But I actually saved 3 questions just to learn to learn more about personal level. So my first question for all of you is, who has the greatest influence to your work? So let's start with Kevin.
I mean, there's so many. I don't even know. There's a lot of information out there. I read a lot. I read like a book a week, basically. And, I feel like most of the information that I come across, no matter what I'm reading, it all kind of relates to each other. And it's all derived from kind of like the same information. And when you break it down, it's not super. We try to make shit complicated and use science to study stuff. It's like it's not that difficult. Be a good person. Develop a relationship with yourself. Most people are just completely distracted with stimulus 24/7. So people don't really even know who they are. Yeah. And regarding who inspires me, Lou and Nancy inspire me. My biggest inspiration.
Aren't you sweet?
And Louis, who you draw inspiration from?
You know what? Not to be a copycat here, but it's a very similar answer. I have not done close to the amount of reading that Kevin has done. He is certainly the reader of the group. But the reading I've done, I've reached a similar conclusion that there's a lot of overlap with great advice that really just gets to things that you don't really see in what I'll call the mainstream world. I could certainly toss out a couple of names, but again, in reading all the different material that I've read, I find all of it inspirational. I will say, in addition to Kevin and Nancy, who inspire me as well, I'm very inspired when I hear success stories from people who really take what we've shared, and not because of us, but just in the world in general, and have been successful as a result of it. It's like seeing what we do in action and seeing the results of it. So whenever I hear those success stories in life in the news, that's very inspiring to me.
Now, you know what, Louis, when you mention about success stories, I don't know if you've heard of Nick Vujicic, the guy without limbs. I think that is a very powerful story. If for anyone who's listening, if you haven't come across the story, just do a quick Google search. He's on YouTube. It's a very powerful story, because I was, the first time I've heard of Nick's story, I was like, if that happened to me, I don't know if I could be as resilient as he is. And that's a very successful story. And I think he really embodies what you would call personal development. But let's hear it from Nancy. Any greatest influencer?
ultimately, I actually am in total agreement with the guys because there's so many influencers out there. The biggest rewards for me that builds my inspiration is client stories. When they have aha moments, it's such a reward, and that you feel like you made a difference in someone's life and be able to help them take a step forward. So that's my biggest influence, really, is client aha moments.
Okay, another story that is meant to, kind of learn more about, personal level. What would you have pursued in your life if you did not do what you're doing? So, Louis.
Wow, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I probably would be doing what I used to do, quite frankly, because I'm doing what I'm doing now because I discovered the power of this information. And really, it gets to something that I've always had a desire to do for many years, which is to teach others, to share with others, to coach others, to help others grow. I wasn't able to do that in my old profession, but if I hadn't come across the kind of information that I've learned and the kind of subject matter that I've learned, I probably would still be doing what I was doing before.
And it's quite a nice jump because before it's all black and white with numbers. It's all black and white, but now you're kind of giving people the idea that you can't, without sounding shady, you can't really put everything in black and white. It's not binary, and I think that's the beauty from jumping from one profession to another. Kevin, what would you have done differently?
If I didn't come across the information that I have throughout my life and apply it to my life, I'd probably be dead or in jail. Most likely dead, though. Like, this shit literally, no joke. I would be.
I believe
I
that.
was super depressed and into drugs and, dark times. I owe my life to the information that I came across. I feel like the more that we can lift ourselves up, I'm very into I'm big into non-physical, more spiritual type of information. And the more that we can elevate ourselves and our emotional state, the more guidance I feel like we receive in life, more synchronicities and like a clearer path kind of carved out for us to recognize, where we want to go. So yeah, if I didn't have this, I wouldn't be here. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I'm glad that those information, that those toolkits that you've met along the way really changed your life. And of course, I think that's the ultimate goal of your podcast. Just to remind people that it's not the end of the world. That there's actually a lot of resources that can help you change the course of your life. And Nancy, what would Nancy be in a different time, in a different space?
Ironically, in college years, I was studying psychology and imagining, I can't even speak today, imagining myself doing something along these lines. And I completely veered off of that for a multitude of years and in a different career. And now what I'm doing is all the parts of that career that I enjoyed the most, that had the reward in it, that really made a difference for others, instead of demanding from others, supporting others. So ironically, I think this is exactly where I'm meant to be, and I wouldn't have done anything else.
Brilliant. And finally, the floor is all yours. Just one quick fire question, but you can add on to anything on it. Why should people listen to your podcast, Kevin?
Well, besides the fact that the information that we talk about saved my life, it's just a different perspective. I think the people that I would want to listen are the people that resonate with the messages that we're trying to spread and the vision that we have, and the information that we provide. It's probably not for everybody, which is cool. But I just want to reach the people that do want a little bit more, want to learn something or be open-minded. That's
and you offer something different because you all come from different backgrounds, different trajectories. But Louis, why should people listen to your podcast? And if people wanted to reach out to you, what platforms can they get in touch with you at?
Actually, what you just said is exactly it. We are three people offering three perspectives. All the information that we share, that we talk about, we come at it from three areas. What does that mean? I guess we can reach triple the amount of people that we otherwise might if it was only one of us. But that actually creates the interesting dynamic when we have our conversations, because for some people it could be, well, you know what, I don't agree with that, or I don't believe in that, but I agree with this over here, or what this other person's saying. So again, it does provide a very wide perspective on the kind of things we're talking about. And as we mentioned, and as the title suggests, we get real. There's no bullshit. It's a very casual conversation. Yeah, we throw in a cuss word every now and then, but quite frankly, it's necessary in some cases, because there's a little aspect, I guess I'll say tough love in a way, where some folks just need a little bit of a push. But you know, when you can get real and authentic, was the word that Kevin used, that's what folks can relate to, and can't get any more authentic than us. As far as the links or the places to hear us, Kevin is our link person. He can share that with folks.
Okay. And before that, Nancy, tell us again, why should people listen into your podcast, and give us a tiny, hint who's going to be your next guest, any upcoming guest that we should, look forward to.
I wish I had a hint for the next guest, but I know we're talking with a couple different people. One who did have a change studies with us, with Lou and I, and that's really inspiring to us. And, if you want to be our guest, bring a topic. We'd be happy to have you as a guest. If you're listening and you want to talk with us, we are more than welcome to have anybody. And why us? Because like Lou said, we do get real. It's in our opening. We get real about life and living. So that's what we're here for. And maybe you'll find one little spark of inspiration in conversations that we have.
Absolutely. And it's a topic that anyone could relate to, even if you're as financially successful as Elon Musk. There's always a room for personal development. So yeah, tune in to the podcast. And Kevin, because you're the social media guy, remind us of the shiny social media channels that we can get in touch with you at.
We're on Facebook,
Facebook
Facebook/CYFHB, whatever the letters are. I'm not good at that. How does it go?
I'll read it.
Clean your fucking house, bitch.
If you look us up, we're there. And then, obviously our podcast is on, Spotify, Apple,
wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah. And I'll do a quick search so I could, put all those links on the video description notes so people can get in touch with you and listen to your episodes about personal development. And you've made a good case of, why should people listen to your podcast in spite of the, plethora of podcasts. There's humor, there's crossword, there's authenticity, and there's live experience. Well, Nancy Bayham, Louis Brown, and Kevin Anderson, it's a pleasure having you here on the DRH show. But unfortunately, our time is up, and good luck to your podcast. I look forward to hearing more about your work.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.